Good morning, everyone. Once again, this webinar is being recorded. It will be available on our visitnc365.com and our partners.visitnc.com site under the COVID-19 resource section. We will have it up as soon as possible. Please ask questions in the Questions tab on the GoToWebinar screen on the right-hand side of your computer. If you are calling in, questions can be emailed to guy.gaster, G-A-S-T-E-R, at visitnc.com. We'd also like to get some questions from you about what you would like to see in future webinars. So you can just put that, if you have any ideas or suggestions, put that in the Questions tab as well. And we'll look to answering those questions in future webinars. All right, I'm Whit Tuttell, and welcome everybody to our webinar on social media. We're going to cover a lot of the topics and ways we've adjusted our marketing efforts and our social media efforts over the past few weeks during this webinar. We'll also cover a little about the state of the state and where things are and what we're seeing from our weekly research that we're doing with destination analysts. So I want to get to that at first. We're doing weekly research, so what we're seeing this is the 5th week, and we're seeing a lot of things start to level out and be the same and not have that much change. What we did notice this year, however, was that there was a market increase in one of the categories, and that was the percentage of Americans who thought the situation was going to get better rather than worse in the next month. So I think that's a really good sign, and that doubled from 15% to about 30%. It had been actually decreasing a little, and now it jumped up and doubled. So we think that's really a good sign that we're actually getting over the hump, or people have that perception that we're getting over the hump. And the beauty of that is that means we'll be able to market to them hopefully soon and get them back on the road soon as well. We're also looking at a lot of other stats. One of the things we see is that while people say they miss travel and they're looking forward to getting back to traveling, their perceptions of travel and how they're going to travel is changing. What we've seen is that almost 50% say they're going to be very careful. Some say they're just going to touch the waters, and then of course there are those that are saying they're going to jump back in. But there's definitely going to be some changes in travel on the other side of this epidemic. We keep seeing people saying that they're going to change the type of destinations, the type of trips they're going to. And this really increased a lot over the last week, jumped up 10 percentage points, to that people will change the type of destination that they're going to. And this is on trips that will last the next 6 months after once we can start traveling again. So this just isn't right after the pandemic ends and travel's opened up. This will cover the next 6 months. What are those changes? Well, we're fortunate. They're going to decrease cruises. They're going to decrease crowded destinations. There are a lot of areas that they're going against. Few interesting points here, I think, to bring out. One of the things they're not going to travel to are the areas that were hit hardest by the coronavirus. People just don't want to go to those areas. Another thing, if you see here, destinations that were slow to put social distancing measures into place are also places they do not want to travel. These are places they're less likely to travel. I think that's a good reminder for us that when we do open up, we want to be careful that we do it in the right way, because fear is still playing a big factor here for travelers. Where will they go after the pandemic? I think this is where we score really well. We can go back to that slide real quickly. Where will they go? One of the first places they're looking for beach destinations, resorts, small towns, villages, rural areas. This speaks directly to North Carolina. I think it's also encouraging to see that people will go to cities and metropolitan areas after the coronavirus, but they will go to those cities. However, they will want to be careful in how they visit those cities. And what are their upcoming plans? We continue to see people move travel into July and August. We're hopeful that there could be some travel in the summer still in June, but it's shifting definitely into the July-August timeframe. And now we're actually seeing some increased plans for travel all the way into September, October, November. So that's going to help some destinations more than others. But that's what we're seeing. And obviously, we hope we can get people back traveling as soon as possible. Our research company, Destination Analysts, they've asked people what were their places they were interested in visiting before and after. So the blue bar is before and the gray bar is after coronavirus situation. I think one of the great things to see here is that we had a lot of interest before, and we've probably had the least amount of decrease in interest of any place they've surveyed. And so we still hold up very well, 27.2%. The only place that had less of a decrease was Alabama, Gulf Shores, and nobody wants to go there anyway. So very good signs for us to see that once this does end, I think we're going to be in the right position. We just have to get out there and market, because everyone is going to be competing for these fewer visitors who are doing different types of trips. So that's what we're seeing on the state level. We wanted to get into what we're doing for the marketing aspect, and wanted to introduce y'all our new marketing director and strategist, Allison Schult. I've known Allison for probably 15 years now, and I've been trying to hire her for about 13 years. So I was extremely happy to be able to get her to come in here and work with us on our entire marketing program. Allison's looking at everything we do from the ground up to get us in that right direction. She's an amazing marketer and strategist. She's worked for media companies, she's worked for destinations, she's worked for large corporations. She's done just about everything. We're thrilled to have her, and it's my pleasure to introduce Allison Schult.
Thank you so much, Whit. What a nice introduction, and good morning to everyone. You know, travel has always been fundamental to how we connect together as an industry. And, you know, I will say I miss it. You know, COVID-19 certainly has altered the plans I had coming in to visit NC 2 months ago. At this point, I had expected to have met many of you in your own destinations, or at least during Visit NC's 365 conference in Asheville, which we had to cancel last month. So today, I genuinely say that I'm very glad to meet you, but I really look forward to seeing you across the state when restrictions on travel are lifted. I'm really honored to be here at Visit NC and excited to explore and implement new and innovative marketing strategies, and obviously with your input. You know, Whit shared some encouraging slides this morning on traveler sentiment and how COVID is finally stabilizing. That's good news for us. But we're still, as Whit mentioned, miles away before travel's economic engine can be ignited, where we're fully can support and respond to that pent-up travel demand. But until then, Visit NC is staying on course, keeping North Carolina top of mind, inspiring a strong sense of community, wanderlust, and hope. So to recap our public relations efforts, we've been extremely successful pitching virtual experiences and those feel-good stories with really strong results. 6 national placements with a reach of 16 million unique monthly users. Now, these stories have shined a light on North Carolina companies who have pivoted, including those 30 distilleries who are now making hand sanitizer, as well as other businesses across the state and in your communities that have pitched in to support North Carolina and combat COVID's devastating impact. Our marketing team has developed, and as you all well know, presented last week, a really strong advertising partner co-op program, which many of you are endorsing with your planned participation in this next fiscal year. Our team also has implemented a targeted social media strategy while we are here today that inspired stronger social engagement that's actually exceeding pre-COVID metrics. So that's good news. Visit NC and our partners have found really creative ways, thank you all, to help travelers inspire a sense of wanderlust by quickly creating these virtual experiences that we are showcasing right now on visitnc.com. So from digital puzzles to generating scenic images, inspirational videos that all play to your destination strength. They're there to educate and entertain those grounded travelers until we can get them back in our destination. Everyone at Visit NC, I will say, has been inspired and impressed with your hard work. We ask you to keep those ideas coming and keep us informed. So now I'm going to turn it over to Nick, and why we are here today. Nick Parker, he is Visit NC's digital media strategist. He's going to give us an inside look at Visit NC strategies and our tactics across social that is helping to amplify our collective share of voice. And after Dana Grimstead, who is Visit NC's marketing manager, she's going to share what creative we have cooking to feed and nurture our followers across our platforms. So Nick?
Thanks, Allison. So as she mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about what Visit NC has been doing on social ever since the COVID-19 crisis began. As the page notes here, for only about the second time in my little over 5 years here, we went dark on social for a while as we kind of figured out what was going on. And talking to a lot of you across the state over the past few weeks, we've all shared the idea that this is, completely unprecedented, and that we didn't really have an idea of how to proceed at first. And now we're starting to figure it out. So as of March 24th, we came back and we had a couple of different ideas about how to approach this. And by that point, we decided that we wanted to go with an approach of, we're all kind of be, at home, hanging out for a while, that travel won't really be possible the way that we thought it might have early on, and that we want to encourage folks to be responsible while also keeping North Carolina top of mind. So we've tried to give them content that does inspire them and keep them thinking of travel here to the state in the future, but also talks to them in the situation that's going on. Says, hey, we understand what's going on. We know that you're all staying home and helping to flatten the curve, and we love that. But we, still want you to think about us and maybe have that little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel approach for it. And therefore, the tone that we've used has been, as it says here, calming, welcoming, and inspiring. We've been trying to walk that line of letting people know that we're here and that we're, thinking about them, and that we're very concerned with what's going on, but also that we, still want to give people a better thing to think about than all the terrible news out there. That's what we really tried to be, as an alternative to all the stuff that you can see on social media. We'd rather be, what we are, which is a beautiful place with a lot of beautiful people, and something that gives people a little bit of hope and a little bit of brightness in these dark times. So when we came back, our first posts were designed to be kind of not an advisory, but really kind of a welcome back and an acknowledgement of what's going on. So we tried to retain our standard voice while also altering our approach to acknowledge what was going on in the world today. And you can see here the results were pretty strong, but what was most encouraging about it was there was very little, if any, negative reaction from people. All the comments, with maybe one or two exceptions, were pretty positive. People sharing their love and support for the state, talking about how much they miss us and want to come back. It was really encouraging. We've been really happy to see it. And unfortunately, that's not always the case in times like these, but it's been the case these days, and that's really wonderful. Here's an example. These are all the posts that we put up across the 3 platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, talking about what was going on at the time and how we'll be here and waiting for you with open arms when it's safe to come back. We've also shifted our approach. Rather than focusing on proactive posting and reaching out to people, a lot of what we've been doing for the past few weeks has been community management. So when people comment on our posts or talk to us about what's going on, we try to respond as quickly and as accurately as possible, while also making sure we keep that warm and welcoming voice. This is an opportunity for us to put a human face on the brand, rather than, a lot of people are wary these days of brands on social media coming across as faceless robots, or somebody's just kind of going through the motions. And we wanted them to know that there are real people here at Visit NC and at LGA. Shout out to the LGA social team. Hope you're listening in. Thanks. They've been putting in a lot of hard work keeping up with this stuff, and we love them for it. But we wanted them to know that there's a real people here that are responding to this crisis, and that we're scared just like you are, and we're worried, but we're also hopeful, and we're believing in the rebound of travel when this all comes back. So we've been also trying to stay on top of trends and social threads. I think social media has been an outlet for a lot of people in these times. They've been looking to social to connect with each other and to just have something to do. And so we've been trying to keep up with those trends in order to stay relevant, and also just to be able to talk to our audience. So one of those trends is virtual vacation day. This is something that was called to our attention by a teammate, thanks Amanda, that the LGA team worked on very quickly, a very short turnaround. I think it was probably 5 hours from the time that I said, hey guys, we should think about this, to the point where they loaded it up and put it live on Instagram. And it's a great example of how working remotely has kind of forced us to adapt, but it's kept us responsive and agile. You know, when you're sitting at home and you feel like you're spinning your wheels, it gives you the opportunity to really dig in creatively, to imagine and to do some things that maybe we wouldn't consider in other times. And this was a good example of, we kind of pulled together some of the partner submissions. So thanks to the folks that are featured here for sending us those. And we blasted it as an Instagram story that had the second highest completion rate for stories this year for us, which is amazing. You know, in these times when people are maybe not thinking about travel first, but on March 30th, you know, right when this was kind of hitting its peak in terms of the crisis, we were talking to people and they were looking for us. The total number of swipe ups you see there doubled our average. So people really wanted to engage with this content, and hopefully those partner submissions saw a corresponding increase in traffic. We've also been talking a lot about feel-good stories. Allison mentioned, you know, some of the local businesses, you know, the distilleries, the different bars and restaurants that are turning into grocery stores or other ways helping out, the hotels that are putting up, you know, quarantined health workers, things like that. And we've just been overwhelmed. We know that the hospitality industry in North Carolina is filled with wonderful people, but now we get to show it in ways that maybe we don't in normal circumstances. And we've been really happy to find these positive stories, either retweet them or reshare them, and get the word out about the wonderful work that our partners across the state are doing. We've also been able to focus on some things that people are doing, you know, like the virtual tours or the interesting kind of, you know, different sort of things that people are doing in this crisis that tap into, you know, the nature that we all know that North Carolina has, which is that we're always very welcoming to people. And we've been able to show that even though we haven't been able to physically welcome people into the state in the same way. So you see that we've gotten a lot of great impressions and engagement with these, but I also want to reinforce that we're still and always looking for these types of stories. A lot of you have sent us these stories and we really appreciate it. Most of what we've posted has been crowdsourced, and we want to continue doing that. So if you've got a partner in your area who's doing great work to shift their business to respond to this crisis, we want to know about it. We want to tell everybody about it. So please let us know. You can email me, you can slide into our DMs, whatever you need to do to get us the good news. But here's some examples. If Staff Peacock's on the line, I know he's looking for that Raleigh denim shout out, but we've got, you know, a lot of different folks, Grandfather, Joko, that beautiful chalk masterpiece from Greensboro, the Master Store. You know, we've tried to talk also about some of the folks. You know, North Carolina is known for being a great state for education and for medicine as well. And the folks at Duke and also at UNC have been leading the way in trying to fight this crisis. We've been trying to talk about that as much as possible, as well as all the other universities across the state. And so one of the other trends that we've really tapped into is Throwback Thursday. This is something that you've probably seen on Instagram or some of the other platforms that focused on IG before, but we really try to tap into it now that we can't travel, but showing what great times people had when they were able to travel, especially back in the day. So this first post that's shown here is actually a picture that a visitor sent to us before the COVID crisis that was taken at Grandfather Mountain back in the 70s, and they just wanted to share it with us. And our LGA team had already been kind of planning on finding a way to work it into it. And then when we were talking about different ideas for social media and how we could proceed these days, the idea of doing a Throwback Thursday weekly post where people showed us their old school vacation photos just seemed like too good of an idea to pass up. So we've been encouraging all of our followers and all of you, please continue sharing these classic photos. The older, the better. I mean, you've seen in the past couple of weeks, we've used old photos from the state archives. So we're throwing it way back there, in one case over 100 years, but we're really trying to get those classic shots. You know, we love seeing those 70s styles or those you know, 60s haircuts or whatever else. Like, we want to see all that stuff. So please don't hesitate to share. We love it. And here's a few examples. Shouts to Ashby for being brave enough to share an old vacation photo. You won't catch me dead sharing any of mine from back in the day. But we've had a lot of different folks reaching out to share their classic throwback vacation photos, and we love it. One other initiative that we've kind of leaned into in these times are the film and literary assets. Shout out to Guy for giving him some love here. But we know that people have been consuming a ton of media at home. The numbers on Netflix and the various streaming services are through the roof, and we wanted to tap into that. So we've been trying to give people inspiration that's based on the stories that are set here in North Carolina or that were filmed in North Carolina. And we have a lot of content like that on our site already. So we've just been trying to drive people to that and encourage them to realize, hey, if you didn't know, big portions of some really big movies were filmed here, whether it's the Hunger Games or the Nicholas Sparks movies, whatever else it may be, we've been trying to really lean into that. So hopefully this addresses a couple of things. One, that people are bored and they need something to consume, and we know that North Carolinians are very proud of their state and they want to see it in movies and TV shows. And two, that we want people to be inspired to come and check these things out when they're done. Maybe this is something they learned during COVID, that when they're able to travel again, they come and see, oh wow, this is District 12 from the Hunger Games. This is really where it was. So here are some examples of some of those posts that we've run to drive people to that content on our site. And then some numbers, because we have to. But this talks about what we've done across the platforms since this crisis started. And as Allison kind of alluded to in the beginning, the numbers have been really strong for us. Our engagements and impressions have been at least equal to, and in many cases exceeding what we were seeing on average, especially for this time of year pre-COVID. So it's been, it's a blessing and a curse, right? It's obviously not the circumstances anybody wants, but we're very happy to see that the content that we've been coming up with has been reaching people and has been speaking to them, and hopefully has been inspiring them to keep thinking of North Carolina and knowing that we want to welcome them back just as soon as we possibly can. And so our insights across the board have been pretty positive. We know that people are uncertain and that they're scared, frankly, but we know that there's a way to speak to them even in those times, and that we want them to be thinking about travel, even if they can't do it in the present tense, then in the future for sure. And we want them to look forward to it. Anticipation is how we all fight things like this, and how we get ourselves into a state of mind to carry on. And I think being able to look forward to your next trip is something that's really powerful for a lot of people. I know I'm definitely looking forward to the next time I'm able to get out once we're all clear of this. And we've seen a lot of comments that it's been as well. There's some examples here of, can't wait to make it back one day, or ready to go to my happy place. We love seeing that stuff, especially on Instagram. That continues to be the platform where we've seen the most positivity. And there's nothing better than we post a new Instagram post and I go in a couple hours later and see all the comments about people saying, hey, we love this and we want to come back soon. It's been uplifting. So definitely recommend that. If you haven't done it on your own accounts or on ours, then feel free, because it's a nice little pick me up. And speaking of the individual platforms, Instagram is still our most engaging, our fastest growing, and that we see that the scenery that we've always posted continues to perform really well right now, despite the fact that people can't actually go see those places right now. They like being at least virtually transported to them when they can. And then Twitter has been mostly our news platform, and also where we've been broadcasting those feel-good stories, and we've seen that really take off for people looking for those feel-good stories, but also the stuff that we've always done, where the original content about movies that have a tie back, or whether it's just driving to some of the stories on our site, are really getting some engagement as well. People are starting to really think about travel in the ways they did before the crisis, and that's been encouraging, especially where Twitter has kind of lagged behind the other two in recent months for us. We're happy to see it driving that engagement. And then Facebook has been our most engaged. People are spending a lot of time on Facebook, and we're trying to give them something good to do while they're there. And as you note here, we've actually seen more engagement on Facebook compared to the similar content before the crisis, which is pretty remarkable. So looking ahead, what are we going to be doing? We're going to continue that existing continuing community management. So we're going to be still talking to people. That's our focus on. We've really tried to devote a lot more of our time than usual to responding to comments, proactively seeking out people who are talking about us, and kind of communicating with them. And we're also going to keep those feel-good stories coming. So like I mentioned, please keep them coming to us. We're going to try to really build momentum and even expand the Throwback Thursday, and also look for other similar trends that we can tap into. We're going to look to get some new initiatives that Dana's going to talk about here in just a minute, that talk about our new messaging, and that really we can drive to. Social media, as I always like to say, is kind of the lead for a lot of our marketing efforts, and that's not going to change. We're going to be hopefully leading folks right to the new stuff that we're developing for the website and elsewhere. And then, just like kind of Whit did at the beginning of this webinar, we're going to be doing the same thing on social, where we don't necessarily know exactly what our followers want to see, so we're going to ask them. We're going to use polling tools on the platforms, or even just posts where people can talk to us in the comments and ask them what that content is they're looking for, what they're most missing, and what they would really like to see, and then we're going to hopefully give it to them. So as always, we really welcome your input and your comments. If you have some questions towards the end, we'll be available, and please keep that great content coming. But in the meantime, speaking of new content, I'm going to throw it over to Dana to talk about some of our new marketing initiatives.
Thank you, Nick. I'm so proud of the social strategy we've taken over the past several weeks. It's hard to go dark, and it's even harder to come back on with a message that's relevant and relatable. But I'd like to virtually applause Nick for the hard work he contributed during this time. Cue the virtual applause, and if possible, everyone throw some claps into that chat box for us.
Thanks, Dana.
I'm going to share with you some of the creative we've developed with our agency, LGA, and we can move on to the next slide. First off, we are transitioning the homepage early for summer travel. We know that when consumers start traveling again, it will be for summer and fall travel, and we want to provide relevant inspiration for them. We've created NC from Home, a link right from the homepage directly to the NC from Home landing page that hosts all of our digital stay home assets, like the virtual experiences roundup. And I would just want to thank all of our partners here and our groups that have contributed to providing some of those virtual experiences for consumers. We truly could not do it without you. Also, from the NC from Home landing page, we'll have custom Zoom backgrounds, so we can move on to the next slide. Awesome. Also from the NC homepage, we'll have custom Zoom backgrounds. Here on the next slide is our team having a little fun yesterday evening testing them out. Consumers can download and share the spirit of North Carolina right from their desk chair or wherever their work from home spot is for the day. We'll also be working for content on the dog travel agent. Mo is working from home just like everyone else, and she wants to reach out and say hello. Visit NC's Dog Travel Agent is an opportunity to be an ambassador of goodwill and travel tippy taps. We'll be doing Zooms and Zoomies with Mo too. Just like the rest of us, Mo is using Zoom to speak to her friends. We'll create a video of Mo and friends barking their way through their very own Zoom and share the antics with followers. And if we can get enough user interest, we'll schedule another Zoomie that followers can actually join in themselves. Next up, we have virtual postcards. With travelers stuck at home, Visit North Carolina will share virtual postcards promoting future visits while promoting a timely stay-at-home message. We'll share through organic social and also create Instagram postcard stickers for use on Instagram stories. Users will be able to upload their own picture of North Carolina and a sticker to create their own customized virtual postcard on Instagram. We'll also create stickers for partners so that they can create their own virtual Instagram postcards too. So here's an example of the Instagram stickers. And on the next slide, we have an example of how partners might be able to use these stickers to promote their own destinations. The next creative idea is still a little work in progress, but I'd like to give you a sneak peek. We're working to shine the light on the restaurant industry and help those who have been deeply impacted. I don't have a slide on this, but I just wanted to let everyone know that we will be working with chefs over the next few weeks to shine a light on that restaurant industry. We'll have more to come on that in the next few weeks, And for now, I'll turn it back over to Allison.
Thanks a lot, Dana, and thank you, Nick, as well. Honestly, I think what we've demonstrated here today as a collective group, Visit NC, our agencies, and all of you, our partners, have done an extremely good job in maintaining and in engaging our audiences in this current climate that none of us wants to be in. We've shifted those social conversations successfully. We believe we are out there growing brand equity in new ways. And we're looking forward to continuing those conversations on social and have them evolve as traveler sentiment changes. You know, the most important thing that we can all be doing is not fall into that pitfall of having the wrong tone. You know, we want to be really effective and engaging. Silver lining for North Carolina brand is strong. You know, all indicators point that we can respond to changing traveler behaviors and benefit from that because our state has the assets and the attributes to match. So I'd like to turn it over to questions now. So I'm going to have Guy join us, Guy Gaster, and he can help field some questions for the panelists.
Thanks, Allison. Our first question came in on primarily addressing frequency and asking if there are any suggestions or best practices as to how frequent a DMO or a tourism entity should be posting on their social channels during the week.
Gotcha. Yeah, happy to jump in and field this one. So this is a question that frankly, Guy was asking me right when we started posting back in late March, and I told him at the time, I honestly don't know the answer because how's this? I can tell you that we probably need to post more than once a week, and we probably shouldn't post as much as we were pre-COVID because, nobody needs to see us 15, 20 times a week. So somewhere in between those two numbers, which is a little facetious and not helpful at all. I think what we found is that a slower cadence than what we had pre-COVID has been the right mix, and that's led to about maybe once a day has been about what makes sense for us. But this is something I tell partners every time somebody asks me this question: is what makes sense for Visit NC might not make sense for your DMO. I think the most important thing you can do is keep an eye on engagement with your posts and see how they're performing relative to what you posted 2 months ago or last year or when you posted similar content before, and see if it's performing better or worse. And usually that kind of tells you, if you're posting a little more often than usual, but you're not seeing the same engagement, maybe you need to throttle back a little bit. Or if you're getting really strong engagement, people seem to be championing at the bit to get your next bit of content out there, then maybe give them a little bit more. So I would say, as a rule of thumb, I think everybody probably should be posting a little bit less than they were pre-COVID, but it really is up to you and especially your audience to tell you what makes sense for your destination.
And Nick, as a follow-up on that, you mentioned posting possibly once a day. Is that on every channel, or does that post mean one day it may be Twitter, the next day it could be Instagram? Could you go into a little more detail?
Sure. No, in that case, it's more the latter. Pre-COVID, we were closer to posting once a day per platform. Maybe not quite that much, but we were much closer to that, several times a week per platform. Now it's kind of, they take turns. There are days where we will post across all three, but they're pretty rare at this time. More often we'll post an Instagram today, and then tomorrow we'll throw something on Twitter, or maybe we'll throw Facebook out there. The big difference, the big exception to that has been Twitter, where we've been retweeting a lot more frequently, but that's not quite the same as, proactively posting content. So with those feel-good stories I mentioned, we've been trying to retweet those as much as possible, which is where a lot of our Twitter volume has come from. But in general, yeah, it's more trying to spread it out a little bit across platforms, since we don't have quite as much content as we did pre-COVID.
A partner asked, we noticed that you are liking or commenting on our posts. So I guess the partner's post and Visit NC is liking those. Is that something you're doing just for the time being during this COVID-19 situation, or is this a shift that will continue as we get back to normal?
So I think the answer to that is yes. It's a little bit of both, to be honest. We have tried in the past 6 months to a year to focus more on community engagement, especially with our partners. So we have been trying to engage with partner content more often, but especially during COVID, where we don't have as much of our own stuff, and we want to really make sure that people know what's going on with partner destinations. We've been making a concerted effort, right, in hand with the community engagement piece, to find and engage with the great content that our partners are putting out there. I'll also say that it might just be that, I think we've always tried to engage with partner content and to comment or like, but I think probably people are seeing it a little bit more these days, just because we have more of the time, and also we're all paying a lot more attention to our social. I mean, even that's a big part of my job, and I've been paying more attention to social in the past month than I did in the months prior. I freely admit to that.
All right, next question. Is it possible to get additional data about the respondents from the destinations analyst slides? And I would say I'm going to let Allison answer that, but just real quick point of reference. We do have, as part of the handouts for this webinar, which is new, if you've been attending several of these webinars, in the handout section, you can download those first couple of slides as a PowerPoint if you would like to have them. And I know we've also been posting information in our weekly news link about some of the trends here in the research. But Allison, you've been working with Marlise on that. Would you like to respond or give any additional information?
Sure. Honestly, if anyone is interested in looking at the full deck from these weekly waves with destination analysts, please reach out to me and I'll make them available to you. I mean, one thing that I find very encouraging about a lot of our research providers right now, you're seeing this with destination analysts, as Whit says, who we've been working with through this pandemic, but there's also Longwoods and MMGY with US Travel, that they're making these, weekly traveler sentiment studies really available to all of us, which I think is really important. I mean, I hate to be cliche, but we are all in this together, and we're going to have to rebound together as an industry. And we always see that travel is the first that comes back. So yes, if you're interested in drilling down, just please reach out to me and I can help you with that.
Great. Next question, Dana, since you presented about Mo and dog travel agent, there was a question on if a DMO has a dog that they would like to volunteer to be part of any of Mo's activities or Mo's Zoomies. How can they get that information to us?
Yeah, sure. So the first Zoomie that we're going to do internally so that we can kind of control the messaging there and make sure that it is all working. The second Zoomie that we want to create, we would love to open up for people to join. So if you want to send me a message with your dog that you'd like to include, go ahead and do that. My email address is dana.grimstead, and that's dana.grimstead@visitnc.com.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Nick, one for you. If you have been dark for a few weeks on social, do you recommend addressing COVID-19 in your initial return post, or just going right into feel-good content?
So this kind of dovetails with another question that was submitted to us before the webinar that talks about common marketing pitfalls that people have been making during this crisis. And I bring that up to say that I think not acknowledging it would be one of those pitfalls. The brands that I've seen that have gotten lit up on social have been oftentimes the ones that have tried to kind of ignore or just kind of Pollyanna their way through the crisis and not really speak to it. And I don't think you can do that. It's not like anybody's unaware of it. I mean, It's the only thing in the news these days. So I would say that you have to acknowledge it in some way, shape, or form. You don't have to come right out and say, hey, we know that the coronavirus is awful, because everyone knows that. But I think you have to kind of walk that line of saying, we haven't, been saying as much lately because we, whatever, however you want to put it, but you have to acknowledge it in some way, shape, or form, and then you can go into the feel good content. I think you can get that done in just one post, but it's good to just kind of say, hey, we know, we're here too, we understand.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but that tone has continued with posts in saying, when you are able to travel, as far as visit NCs, or looking forward to seeing you again soon when it's safe, that sort of thing in the posts. Is that continuing on through?
Absolutely, yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think that's another pitfall that we've seen is the brands that have kind of tried to market the same way they did before COVID have also been the ones that have gotten roasted for it. If there've been at least one destination I can think of that kind of mentioned like, hey, win a trip to come see us, and they didn't really acknowledge like when we can again, or kind of the conditions. And you got to be very careful with that stuff because they got lit up for it. And I think it's important to keep that tone of safety first, and then travel still very important, but travel second to safety right now, because that's just the world we're living in.
All right, the next question, I think this was in regards particularly to the feel-good stories, but I guess it could carry into others. Should we tag Visit NC in our social media posts, or should we share those feel-good type stories with you in another way? And if so, how?
Again, both. Yes, please. Feel free to tag us, especially if it's travel or hospitality related. If it's a hospitality business, or if it's something tourism related and they're helping out, then please feel free to tag us. But also don't ever hesitate to reach out to me directly through email, just like Dana's. Mine is first name last name at Visit NC, so it's nick.parker@visitnc.com. I love seeing that stuff. Just as if nothing else, it's a nice boost to my day. My standard disclaimer here applies, which is that we do get a lot of content. We're always asking for it. We can't necessarily use every single piece that comes in, which is a blessing that we have. But we do try to get to everybody, and we will do our best to get everything that applies and fits with our messaging out on our channels.
And a little bit of follow up on that as well. That information, when we do receive it, we also share with the Visit NC PR team, and as part of the overall efforts that are pushed out about the good things going on in North Carolina and helping build that state brand as well. So I know Nick has mentioned hospitality and tourism partners in your areas, but we've also highlighted even individuals that stories have come out about that have shifted their attentions. If you all get WIT's local updates, we even highlighted a man who recently left a rather large tip in Smithfield and really made a difference for the server that received that tip. So we're certainly happy to share any and all good news, if you will, during this time. Let's see. Next question, we kind of addressed it, but not as much. We talked about coming back, but it is said, are you seeing, if you mention COVID-19, more or less engagement if that's mentioned in a post?
That's a good question. I would say we don't have enough data to really say concretely whether or not we have. The initial posts that kind of addressed the crisis directly got really strong engagement. Those were also the first posts that we had made in 11 days. So that's not a fair test. And honestly, a lot of what we've been doing hasn't necessarily mentioned it directly. The feel-good stories on Twitter that we've been retweeting and sharing have obviously spoken to it. And we've seen a little bit less engagement on those, but then again, you tend to see less engagement on retweets to begin with. So I don't know that we have a fair test for that. As we gather more data, we'll be happy to share. But I don't think you need to harp on it and go back to it, because like I mentioned before, everyone knows that's what's going on. But by the same token, you can't just ignore it completely. If the content relates to the crisis in some way, then don't be afraid to address it, is I guess what I would arrive at there.
All right. For Zoom backgrounds, if a destination were to create their own, would you advise on branding them with the logo or simply just having the destination image?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have our logo on ours. We think that it's a great place to just support that brand identity and remind people, you know, who is putting out this content and where these locations are. So in my mind, and we talked about this back and forth with our agency, we originally didn't have our logo on there and then ended up adding the logo. Just because we feel like it's a great spot to get your logo on there. I would recommend if you do add your logo that you go with a smaller version of your logo. If you have something that's bold and tends to take over the image, that might not be the best spot for it on the Zoom backgrounds, but if you have like a watermark image or something that you can kind of just put down in one of the corners or up in one of the corners, then that's the recommendation that I would give to you guys.
Great. And Allison, I think you had a little tip about logos as you've been playing with the Visit NC Zoom backgrounds.
Yeah, I don't know if the audience noticed, but when Dana shared the screenshot of the group of us testing out the backgrounds and seeing how easy it is to load them before a meeting. And what you might have noticed on mine, you saw the North Carolina logo was flipped. And it doesn't appear that way when you're in a Zoom call, but if you're the person taking the screenshot and when you share it, it does appear. So there is a little bit of a pitfall, there. But one thing that I wanted to add to the conversation about, tagging Visit NC or putting NC logos, before COVID, after COVID, we all know that as brands, it is so difficult to get our messages seen organically on Facebook and other platforms. So I think as much as we possibly can, if we can amplify that share a voice together and be much more collective and brand messaging, we will, we'll do better, I think, in showing up in more of our followers' feeds. So, I'm a, brand advocate. So I always like to see the brand out there where it's appropriate. And obviously when we are not, doing any sort of hard selling, especially right now.
All right, great. Question came in, if we create our own Zoom backgrounds as well, what's the best way to share them or get them out to our own followers?
I can jump in here and just say that if you're able to have a dedicated page on your site that makes them available for download, that's the most reliable way to go about it. But there are different ways to do it as well. If you could, obviously, if you're going to be promoting them on social, if they're able to, although a lot of the file sizes probably aren't going to work for that, you could set up something as simple as a Dropbox or whatever else. But I would say for the most part, you can control it the best going through your own homepage.
Yeah, and I would just echo that. I think creating a landing page on your website that houses all of your stay home or from home information is a really great idea. And your Zoom backgrounds can go there, in which people can download them, and then you can share them through social or whatever other channels you have, like your e-newsletters or any other way in which you communicate with your consumers right now.
Great. A question came in. Where on the Visit NC site will the NC from home link be located?
Yeah, so we're working on getting this live right now as this webinar is going on. So it'll be, if you go to visitnc.com and you scroll down, it'll be right there on the home page underneath of the summer activation site.
And Dana, for those who are familiar with the home page, there's a first and last kind of montage video that's there, and then a white text box, and it would be under that text box. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
Yep, and when you click on that, it'll link over to the landing page that houses all of the Stay Home North Carolina information.
Okay. Next question. We've gotten some new virtual experiences in our area. How can we get them on the attraction list that's on the Visit NC page?
I think the best way is to contact our PR team. And I believe they sent out an email yesterday providing a link and a document where it's really easy for partners to go in and put in that information, and then it'll go right to our various teams to get it on the virtual experiences page, to have it put in queue for a potential social media post. So I think that's the best way to go at this point.
Okay. Very good. And last one here, are there going to be additional virtual postcards created that will feature more of the state?
Yeah, so the virtual postcards that we showed today are all just examples. We're still waiting and developing the creative on that. So we will have a variety of postcards that people can download, and then we'll have a variety of stickers that we'll use on Instagram, in which people can upload their own images as well. So that'll help us showcase everyone across the state. And we'll make sure we also have a variety of virtual postcards too.
And I think probably one other thing to mention is when you share images with us to use as part of the virtual postcards, make sure that we have all the licensing rights to be able to do so. I think that's important to make sure we're covered there.
Great point.
All right. And for those who maybe did not get the email that was mentioned, that was sent out by the PR team, a couple of you have mentioned that in your questions. We'll send that directly to you, and we'll also look and see if we can't possibly include it with our news link edition that comes out later today. Well, very good. Well, this is concluding our webinar. I want to thank the Visit NC staff for providing their input with it. Hope you have found it successful. Before you exit, again, as Whit had mentioned, I strongly encourage you to submit in the question side any topics you would like us to possibly address for upcoming webinars. And again, I can't state enough, we are here to help, and please feel free to email us directly, and happy to get more information and be able to help share your messages as well. So again, we'll have another webinar next Wednesday at 10 a.m. and information on what all will be covered in that will come your way. Thanks again for your attendance, and hope you have a great day and even better week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Mm.